Welcome, ladies and germs, to the Cactus Atlas. Greetings from the Pioneer Arizona Living History Museum in Phoenix, Arizona. On today's adventure, we're going to be taking a tour of this property and viewing lots of old-time West buildings. I'm excited for this, so let's go on this adventure. But first, gotta rob the bank. So we're here in this old bank, which is actually a reproduction of a bank modeled after one in Phoenix from the year 1884. But it really has an awesome old-time feel in here, so it feels authentic. There's my grandpappy, hard at work. He's hard of hearing, so he's not gonna even know I'm here. I could sneak up on him if I wanted to. Hey, grandpappy. Hey. Hey, tell her I'm here. I need to make a withdrawal. Come to hold up the bank. How are you going to hold up a bank if there's nobody here to let you in? That's a good security strategy. Don't have anybody at the bank and you can't do anything. Genius. Welcome to the old tonsorial parlor. No, this is not where you'd come to get your tonsils removed. Tonsorial is derived from Latin, I believe, the word shears. This is a old school barber shop. Now here at the old barber shop, you can get a variety of services. Maybe you need a shave, trim up your hair, but you can also get a boil lanced, get stitched up. These were very versatile people. They took care of a lot of your needs. Maybe even some dentistry while you're here. You got a tooth problem? Come see the old barber. He'll take care of you. Dude, they have totally rad toilets. They're rad. Here we are at the old sheriff's office. This is another reconstruction of an adobe building based on a sheriff's office from Globe, Arizona from the 1880s. Sometimes it also served as a courthouse, one-stop shop for all of your crime needs. There's people asleep in there. Do you see that? I don't want to wake them up. They're bad guys anyway. Now the way they did the reconstruction, according to the information here, is they had an old glass plate photo of a similar structure, and they must have used that just as a basis. So one thing I wanted to point out to you is a lot of the buildings we're seeing so far are not original buildings, although they do have some originals here, I read. Many of these are reconstructions based on old photos, things like that. One thing you may have caught on by now is you can't enter a lot of the buildings. You can walk up to them and get a really good look, and I'm sticking my camera in there. I was a little skeptical coming here knowing that. I was a little worried it wouldn't be good. Now that I'm here, it doesn't bother me that much actually. You really get a good view of the buildings and it actually works out pretty well. So not a bad thing actually. Looks like there's lots of bounties. Make some money over here. Now of course, part of the business of being a sheriff and upholding the law, you gotta do some executions. Now this style of gallows I think would be a luxury back in the day. They had a trapdoor, snap your neck, I'm assuming almost instant death, if not instant death. However, a few weeks ago we were traveling to another ghost town called Vulture City here in Arizona, where we saw this famous place called the Hanging Tree, where they used to hang men from trees without a trapdoor. That sounded like some really gruesome stuff. If you want to know more about that, I'm going to put a link in the description down below to that video we made if you want to learn more. This is another reconstruction of what they call a daub house. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's basically a structure of just wooden holes and what looks like just mud. And this is an example of a really early pioneer style home. Now I did some additional reading about this online, and there's some pretty gross stuff associated with this. What I was reading is, it was an account from I think a pioneer who lived in these or built these things back in the day, and they were saying they preferred to sleep out in the open air rather than in here, especially during rain, because when it rained they had mud on the roof. So when you're inside, not only would you still just get wet, you'd have mud dripping on you. And the most grisly thing that just gives me the willies is that we have scorpions here in the Southwest, and when the rain happened and things fell down, scorpions would fall on you in addition to that. So why the heck would you even bother? Frontierland! It's made of wood and mud and scorpions. It's no surprise to me that structures like this don't survive, because with time that mud just melts away and then the wood crumbles. And here we have an example of a house that is original. It came from up north near Flagstaff, Arizona. It's known here as the Northern House, and it's a really good example, I guess, of a cabin from up north. Interestingly, this was built in around 1885, they believe, and this housed 10 people, if you can believe that. It was a couple who had 8 kids. Just so you know, I'm not lying. This house belonged to a Jeff D. Newman, which included his wife, 3 sons, and 5 daughters, totaling 10 people. I suppose back then you didn't spend as much time indoors, sitting in front of the TV, playing video games, watching Netflix, but 10 people in that, whoo! And here we have another original structure, the Ashurst Cabin. This was the boyhood home of Henry F. Ashurst, who was the first senator of Arizona, and this was built circa 1878. Really curious to stick my head inside there and see what I see. Wow, this is pioneer living here. Once again, another original structure moved here, apparently piece by piece, in a very painstaking fashion. It's one of the neat things about this museum is that it's rescued so many buildings that were doomed for demolition or would have just deteriorated. And here we have a prime example of the Old West, the lawless times when men lived here in the Arizona Territory. The Flying V Cabin, another original structure here, and for me, this might be one of the highlights of the Pioneer Museum. This cabin was built in the 1880s. It was moved here from Pleasant Valley, Arizona. And come check this out. All around the cabin there are slats, like this one. And another one over here, which allowed them to shoot their gun through the holes and protect themselves from raiding Indians at the time. Another interesting thing about this cabin is it was built by a family that was involved in one of the bloodiest conflicts, I think, in Arizona history. It was a range war, a feud that makes the Hatfield and McCoys look like child's play. It's known as the Tewksbury Graham Wars or the Pleasant Valley Wars, and I think a couple other things. You may want to read about that. I think we're going to do an episode about that in the future. It's so interesting. But many men died in that. It was so bloody and so bad that many believe that Arizona was delayed in getting its statehood because it was such a lawless territory at the time that they didn't want to incorporate Arizona as a state into the United States. But this is a piece of history. If only walls could talk. Imagine living here, always under the threat of natives in the area, Apaches. We'll take you around the cabin. Notice the slats in the walls on all sides of the house, giving them 360 degrees of protection. Old chimney over here. It's amazing how this thing didn't burn down, really. Wow, that was really neat, seeing the Flying V Cabin. I think so far that may be my favorite structure here, mainly because a lot of the bloody history around it. There are a lot more original structures here than I thought. Like this whole section that we've been walking through with all the cabins, they all seem to be original structures. Here we have the old schoolhouse. where you would go to get a good old-fashioned learning back in the day. Looking at the interior, it's really beautiful. It just feels authentic. Gives me a sense of what it may have been like to be learned back in the day. Back then, if you wanted to keep warm, you'd have to throw another log in the fire as you did your studies. And don't dare you complain. And another really nice touch, that looks like a dunce cap. I think they need to bring those back in our education system, don't you? This church is a reconstruction of a church that was built circa 1880 and was in operation until about 1927, a church from Globe, Arizona. Apparently there were plans for the original church, so they did a bunch of painstaking research to recreate this authentically. You can really hear how your voice echoes in here. If you were giving a sermon or something, hellfire and damnation type thing, I assume that echoing would add to the effect. The bell in the original church was dubbed God's alarm clock, and it was used to notify people of church services as well as to warn of Apache raids and other impending dangers. Here's a beautiful example of a Victorian era home. This is actually one of the first examples of a wood frame house, originally located in downtown Phoenix. Before Phoenix had a railroad, houses typically weren't built from lumber because it was hard and expensive to ship lumber here. So houses back in the day were built with adobe, and we've seen some examples of that so far in our journeys today. It's a beautiful example of a Victorian home, a wood frame home. Out of all the structures and homes we've seen here today, this might be one of the most relatable ones. After seeing some of those cabins and seeing how people lived, this is absolute luxury. Although living in the pioneer times or the olden times would have been wrought with problems. You would have to survive disease. If you could survive childhood, I'm sure that would be quite the accomplishment. But every time I visit sites like this or any of the ghost towns, something about them just calls out to me. Life just seemed simpler to me, despite the hardships, despite the constant danger. I don't know. It just seems like living to survive, living to feed yourself. It just seems a lot simpler than having to go to an office for 40 hours a week or more and dealing with all the personalities and all of the unpleasantness we have today. Sometimes I wonder, as human beings, is modern society the right way? What do you guys think? Leave me something in the comments below. Would you rather be able to go back in time and live more simply, or do you prefer your modern conveniences and modern ways of life? I'm gonna give you a few final thoughts about our experience here today at the Pioneer Arizona Living History Museum. I kind of came here not knowing too much about it, did some research. I was a little skeptical, but this place ended up getting an A on our list. It's really awesome. You really get a good taste of what pioneer living was like. There's a lot more original structures here than I had accounted for, and even the reconstructed ones feel authentic. They feel old, they feel natural. I would highly recommend coming here. It's very accessible. You get a nice little walk-in, but it's not too hard. And yeah, this has been a great experience. So big thumbs up from Cactus Atlas. If you're new here, please subscribe to our channel. And if you like this content, give it a big thumbs up. Also, use that notification bell to be notified whenever we release new content on our channel, which we are doing all of the time. Well, until our next adventure, please take it easy, and we'll see you really soon.
Thanks for coming, partner.